last time. You were either here or saw the video. This time, we can have as much discussion as we can. Let's catch up. I could even stop with air. I'll give you 1 minute to think of a question or two. We can go around, whatever, you raise anything at all. I'm also thinking of examples of participation. If you prefer to play football, swim in Florida during class time, that's fine. Participate in another way. I'm thinking of some things. We could have people show up, you alone with 2 friends. You could all have hats, and you could show us and tell us a story of why those hats. Okay, this has got Alaska Power Authority. Why am I wearing this? Not only because it's a little warmer, but the director of the Alaska Power Authority was at the time leading the largest public project in the United States. He was building a dam, and it involved it was a massive getting into a river and a lake, but it was on the other side of a mountain. There were no roads to it, no airports, anything. How could he do this? Respecting environmentalist concerns. Because he'd done both before this. People are talking about the Trump staff. People are being appointed. Some are his brothers or sisters. But there are other people who are from. There's a division between people coming from the big tech Silicon Valley firms, and other people who say, no, we want little entrepreneurial individual firms with 5 people, 20 people, because this is where 66% of all new jobs in the U.S. and in Western Europe, where this has been studied, are created. New jobs are little firms, not you become Microsoft. Microsoft's still going, but the ones that are really growing, etc. How can you capture things like that? We talked about this title, Kentucky Karaoke. Okay, the big theory of how America is different, how it works. Tocqueville wrote the book, and he said, at least the simplest version, the one-line version, is civic organizations, including little churches. We asked, who's doing karaoke in China today? Is it big firms and organizations, which is what it used to be 20, 30 years ago? In Japan, Korea, China, Taiwan. Okay, maybe it's shifting away from the big firms, and it's more with the family and maybe friends. Maybe people who are having dinner together, drinking together, and singing karaoke together. Okay, I've looked on the web. You could look on the web, try to find creative karaoke. So you've got the older style was illustrated when the Prime Minister of Japan came to Washington to meet at the White House. He said he really wanted to come to America. He really wanted to go to Graceland. What's Graceland? Why did he want to go there?
Is that a cemetery?
No. Nobody knows. Okay, that shows your age. Yeah, no?
Isn't that where Elvis Presley?
There we go. Okay, Elvis Presley. Okay, so President Bush, the Prime Minister of Japan, went to Tennessee, Graceland, and there's a video there of the two, and the Prime Minister of Japan sang 2 or 3 different Elvis Presley songs in English, and he had a little bit of the dance about each one. Okay, you could look for videos like that, which shows to help the Asians as if they need help. They're doing some of this, but the ones I haven't seen good videos of that. The ones where I've seen that are better are Russian. The Russians have got, so I can't understand the Russian language, but you can see the singing. They also do it with poetry, with music. But they, most of all, they add outfits, dancing, hair, hats, maybe 2 or 3 people. You could come in with 1 or 2 friends and put on a little show for us. Okay. I have a hand up.
Yeah, I saw this one video of a bunch of like Russian babushkas just sitting around a table and they were singing Britney Spears' Hit Me Baby One More Time. And I thought that was fascinating.
Okay.
You know, I thought it was just so entertaining to watch. They weren't like dancing, but they were just in a circle, just being together.
Okay. What are American values? If you take the traditional American New England Salem, I've got some relatives in Salem, I know it. They don't smile. They're austere. They work 24 hours a day almost, etc. Okay. If you go to the South, they've got the European aristocratic, closer to that, a little bit of that Russian. And the folk popular version of that is Elvis Presley. 40% of African Americans, 40% of Chicago residents recently, going down a little bit, were African American. They bring some of, so what's African American in terms of culture, the examples I'm talking about now? It's Southern, parts of Southern culture. Okay, I'm giving you 2 hypotheses. It's black power, or it's Southern culture, which is shared with the whites. 2 competing, drastically different hypotheses. How could we test those, and how could you explore that with qualitative or quantitative data? Okay. One example we have, and maybe, why don't we get, well, I don't want to talk, I want to give you a few examples of what we might talk about right now, but some things you could propose or just mention, throw out something today. What might we have an activity where you can participate as individual students, either with another friend to the left and the right, say, hey, let's do a karaoke and let's try to do, you know, X or Y. And you can look at a couple of these Russian or other examples and do something like that. Just one silly example. I go to MDs, I go to doctors at USC, Northwestern, and Rush. They're all competing. There's some individual doctors who could be very smart at any one of these. Each person is different. One surgeon at Northwestern went to the University of Chicago for college and for her medical school training, but she's been for her career at Northwestern. And she said, when I was in college, there was an economics professor, and he came, the guy, and I learned I found later, because she didn't know about this, Chicago Magazine gave him a prize of the worst dressed man in Chicago, that professor of economics. Okay. And so when she was a student in his class, and I think she was taking the class because of her outfits, she would whistle each time he would come in, and then everybody else would cheer and laugh and so forth. Okay, think of something else. Okay? You could have 3 of you, see if you could be the worst dressed guys in Chicago, at least in Hyde Park. Okay? And how would he dress? I mean, I'm pretty conservatively dressed today, but I deliberately looked for something that was a little different. You know, where you have colors, music, etc. Okay. Who has another suggestion? Any other thoughts? Or we can go to real questions. Yes, go ahead.
You can come in and you could perform a cultural dance that you're not accustomed to.
A culture what?
A dance.
A dance. I or you. Okay. Either one. That is, it doesn't have to be the professor for sure. I'm gonna be participating a lot anyway. So we need you to be able to show you're gonna go from an A- to an A because you participate so brilliantly, okay? all kinds of options. Just audio backup. Okay. Good suggestions. Serious or anti-serious questions or comments?
I have a question based on something you said last lecture about like assets, like cities investing in like assets. I guess I was just curious if you thought that there could ever reach a point where they spent too much money on assets, like to the point where they're not making back what they're spending.
Oh, for sure. That's argued about all the time, and it's argued about at the city level. It's argued in the U.S. Congress, and what they do in Congress is, I worked for years with the U.S. Conference of Mayors, lobbying with the White House, with the Office of Management and Budget, was one side, but then the Congress and each individual congressman has got their preferences. Either they're from, and so it's easy that it may well be that they go to why don't you pass those on down for instead of stopping with the masks. It may well be that an active congressman has managed to get too much money, if you will, for one city or something else. But then, what's the evidence? You hire someone, who does a cost-benefit analysis. Okay, how do you get the numbers? Well, you have an expert. Okay. I'll give you just one more example. I worked for 1 week when the Chicago police were going into mandated binding arbitration between the police union and the mayor. Okay, I was hired to work with the mayor and his top lawyer in the law firm, and we worked for a week in advance as to what. So we knew we got an example. The police union had hired a Texas consulting firm, and they'd already had prepared a 100-page book on why they were underpaid in the police in Chicago. So the lawyer gave me, can you read this book and we got to answer, we got to do better. So we had to come up with that in a week. Okay, so and they had ridiculous examples. They had numbers to say this table shows that the police are way underpaid. So I read through the 100 pages. Just give you one example. My first reaction was, how about overtime? How much do they get paid overtime? Did they get paid? A whole lot more. Time and a half, maybe more if it's weekend and holidays and so forth. Not a single line about overtime in the 100-page book. Okay? So can you have too much or too little? All right, so assets. Are the police an asset? In the sense that, so let me ask you, based on what I told you Monday, is that an asset? Asset is a term more often used from social movements or from SSA, the social workers. There's a literature where we talk about assets are mobilized into something else. The economic classic term is what I talked about Monday. What's that term? Amenities. Okay. How do you measure amenities? And that's what we talked a fair amount about that to start some of this. And this is what this department, economics, for 20 years, and continues today. Ed Glazer, the top urban economist, studied by Gary Becker and here, He's been chairman of the economics department at Harvard, off and on for a number of years. So it's both here and at Harvard. And as I pointed out briefly, the classic economic way of thinking is to say, let's find a key variable we want to have in a cost-benefit analysis, and we want to measure each. And so I gave you the example of bumpy roads, and they have bumpy roads as soon as you drive from Evanston to Chicago. How much do we lose in Chicago by people having to drive to work on those bumpy roads, and they slow down and so forth? And so he has a number. Well, yeah, it's X million dollars. Okay, so that illustrates the classic Chicago way of measuring amenities and building these together by putting. But the problem is they don't put very many. They say ceteris paribus, and other things equal, bumpy roads make this difference. My background is closer, if you will, to Jim Heckman, if you want to just cite another economist, with Ed Glazer. Heckman is more empirical, and his wife is a former research assistant of mine, and he had all of these sociology journals up on his wall, and he reads so he's been working on labor force modeling, discrimination, and how people have risen socially or not, economically, and so forth. When I've been going to workshops with and I've done this ever since I first came here for decades, listening, talking, I taught a course in urban economics with George Tully. How do you think about putting, that is, when George first started, he used January temperature, did fancy regressions of this. My reaction was, or bumpy roads. Today, they're still doing this right now. They're saying this is a problem of modeling. If you say ceteris paribus, the world doesn't do that. You're simplifying in your head as an economic, atomistic thinker, whereas I tend to be more holistic. It's more the English versus the German model. I have more of a German background in that holistic sense. And so what we came up with, I think it was the first time I was here, was to take a whole bunch of these, and then it came into this title, Scenescapes. This is where it really made the difference. Was put together several hundreds of these, not just bumpy roads alone, but several hundred amenities. And then what's the difference between Evanston and Chicago? Or between that road from that main road that people may drive from Evanston onto Chicago. Not every street, not the whole city, but even an individual street. We can do that now. We got, that is the big data, which is now becoming more and more available for download. You can do all kinds of things for cost-benefit analysis. All of this stuff feeds into cost-benefit analysis of whether it's so. Yeah, just to make the point, if it's not clear, are the police an amenity or not? Why or why not? Who pays? Does each citizen pay? Are you sure? Is it in your tax bill? No. You don't get to choose police. You may pay to the city, and the city may pay, and the union fights with the mayor, and they pay the police. Whereas by contrast, if you go to a restaurant, you pay from the menu. You don't, that is, in that sense, the police help foster security or dirty air. If you have more environmental activities, then you have more of an amenity. That is, you don't have market price attached to what the individual consumes. So an amenity is a product or a service which is non-divisible and which can be charged by an individual consumer, such as a bridge. I mean, if it's a bridge where you have to pay, so it used to be called a Chicago Skyway, but went from Chicago to Indiana, you pay. And in New York City, they've just started, you can pay up to $14 just to get into Manhattan. In the Wall Street area, trying to go over a bridge now, you pay $14. Okay, London has done that. It's done that for 10 years or more. I think Oslo started long before the Americans did this. Okay, but generally, who won a Nobel Prize for saying what this illustrates? Okay, that's a harder question. Probably nobody. No, okay, maybe that's too abstract a question. I'll put. What's a public good? Any economics students? We got several public students, several economics. Okay, yes.
Would air be an example?
Sorry, air. Absolutely, yes. But what's the theory? I mean, what's the?
It's accessible by the public. It's accessible by the public. You don't pay for it.
Accessible by the public, but in that sense, which in the public? Everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the key point. Everybody gets the public good. Is it the same thing as public service? No, public service is what the police do. Public service is what you pay for as a taxpayer for the city. A private good is what you pay for in a menu in a restaurant. So a private good is different from a public good. Okay, the public good was invented, the concept really, by Paul Samuelson. He really got a Nobel Prize for this. Because this said, but in terms of this course and in terms of thinking about this, the bottom line of that paper was illustrated. Well, he introduced it at the time in the 1940s. The English economists were actively advising, and they were doing what was called welfare economics. And they would say, the English government, England needs these things, and we ought to do more bookstores, or more libraries, or more cleaning up, or more police, etc. But how do they come up with those numbers? And so Samuelson basically said, you can't do this, and you're not doing these properly. And so he had in the front of the London School of Economics, he had the top economists were sitting right there. He said, "You're doing it wrong." And he was then 32 or something like this. He's a young Turk. He just published this paper. They showed up because they knew about the paper. But okay, so the bottom line, which he then, I would say, is a mistake, but he said this basically, this is an impossibility theorem, that we can't measure the cost of public goods because they can't be charged the way you do for a menu in a restaurant. Therefore, we can't get the intersections of the supply and demand curves. We can't get equilibrium in a long-term manner that economic theory leads us to want to do, and that's part. Okay, so in that sense, most economists followed what Samuelson had said. They stopped studying anything to do with public goods, like the environment, or quality of services, or other things like this, for about 30 years. A long time. Kenneth Arrow came up with basically a more complicated version, but it was the same kind of thing. Democracy, voting, and so forth. So we can't do this in a way that matches the way economic theory ought to be able to reach a normative answer as to what's the right amount. It could be in a cost-benefit analysis or something else. And so what they said, this is an impossibility theorem. We can't do this. And economists stopped. This changed so political science then, we're using group pressures as the core idea from Robert Dahl and others, David Truman. This was Chicago. It was invented in political science early in the 1920s, roughly. An economist other economists started to come up with ways of trying to find economic theories that could somehow link with politics. And when I first was here in the faculty, Milton Friedman, George Stigler were bringing in top political scientists from across the U.S. or around the world. Say, you know, how can we study politics and do it more scientific, seriously? And so the guy who dressed creatively and Stigler and others worked a lot of what they then called regulation. And what are the economics of regulation? That's all came from Chicago. So the issues of were gradually transformed, and the political science said, hey, it's a good way of doing this. They threw out a lot of the theorizing they were doing before, and today we still have a major core of political science is based on what they call public choice or social choice or rational choice, and they try to take things from Adam Smith, or at least the neoclassical tradition, which is the, sort of the theoretical core here within economics. All right, so don't want to say too much on this, but what I'm suggesting is what we want to do in thinking about issues like the environment, social diversity, the Trump discussions about fighting with Biden is not things which we should answer or say this is right or wrong. Certainly we don't want to say, at least I will not try to say any of this from a normative standpoint that this is good and this is bad. I'll leave you may have moralistic concerns. You may feel, we asked us last time, how many people in your family talked about this over the break? A lot of people said yes. Okay, there's a division all around the U.S. and around the world. I mean, the people going wild, you know, and so the president of Argentina said, you know, Trump really ought to make me able to manage Argentina better because Trump will do the right things. Okay. Prime Minister of Canada, what he said the opposite. I'm quitting. I'm resigning as Prime Minister. I can't. I mean, the majority of citizens in Canada support Trump over me as Prime Minister. He didn't say that in his resignation address, but that was background. Okay, so these things are hot. They're divisive, and what we want to try to do in this course is to look at some of the ways that these have been analyzed, that we can bring them into the general course of the general theme of the course: global, local politics. Politics meaning not just the political decisions, but also the cost-benefit analyses which feed into these, which come from political science, sociology, economics, etc. Okay, so I'm giving you that sort of answer to a question. Let me sit down, ask some more people to come up with a question or a suggestion or two. Who else? What do we have that's question?
Yeah, so my question is, I think we see in modern times, like big companies and like big corporate leaders play a huge,
Just stop for a second.
Yeah.
Modern meaning,
like current times.
what, 2 years ago or 100 years ago?
No, like like right now.
Right now, okay.
Like present time.
Present now.
Yeah, like in like corporate leaders like Elon Musk playing a huge role in politics. Has that always been the case, or is it kind of increasing?
Okay.
And
Okay, that was one of the number one questions, and let's say from, this is what made me most famous as my first papers I did, first book was called Community Structure, it was called Community Power. And what's the role of business? And there were two positions. The majority position, the huge majority, was business dominates the world. And the Saskia Sassen version of that came from Lenin, as I talked about it on Monday. We had Adam Smith versus Lenin. We had markets versus global capitalism and led by business. Okay, so the people, and many people in the world and in the U.S. still think and talk in these terms and vote in these terms. So the Dahl answer at Yale, well, so Hunt was we'll talk a little bit here, but not a whole lot, because we've done it in the fall course, and I worked on it for 10 years and still off and on and more as part of things, we're doing part of the scene, if you will. But the quick answer is it depends, or that we have both. We have that is the reason for studying this, that I've worked on this for years, is to study cities. Don't ask and try to find an answer from one person whose name is Musk, and then try to say, the general question is, does business dominate in Argentina? You know, you and I don't know a damn thing about details of that. We know what the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post, some people say, but the point is, these things are very hard and tricky to study carefully. And so the whole field of community power grew out of this. And the core ideas for power in families and businesses and nations comes from this community power literature. Okay, so the quick answer is, you can find some cities, well, let me back up. How can we analyze that? The way to do science is to compare, not to take one case and say that's the world, but to try to say, how can we get variations in that, so we can say, how strong is business? So if you have some cities, and some cities are and were heavily business dominated, and others that were heavily politically dominated. So if you can find variations, and if you ask, ask 10 people, and so the most dramatic, visible public ones were big Texas cities, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio. They had the Chamber of Commerce and the business organizations were openly contributing huge amounts of money to individual council members and the mayor, saying, we have a position, we want to work with you, and we'll support your et cetera. That was just taken for granted. Then we had the other side, and so they got defeated by Kathy Whitmire in Houston most dramatically. She organized people who were including people from outside Houston, including gays, lesbians, others, and they defeated the old boys. And so you have these even within Houston, within Texas cities, but certainly across the U.S. and the way that people voted for and against Trump. So the quick answer, which was stressed in my edited book, not just by me alone, but a number of others, were saying, let's look at the reasons that we may have more business or less business, instead of saying, I'm not saying that Trump is right or wrong, but simply, or that your statement is right or wrong. But using Trump as an example is great. I mean, for sure, everybody's talking about it right now, and then why and how much, but so my quick follow-up is, one related follow-up is, does a fact that a policy such as spending more on the police, is that a business policy, or the head of one firm, one business? That is, does the social, economic, the professional back of the job, if your job is a businessman, or your job is a social worker, or your job is the mayor, and the mayor previous job was to be the organizer for the teachers union, and right now the mayor is negotiating and fighting with the teachers for the teachers union, and they're trying to settle on, and so the mayor initially went to, the mayor of Chicago said, as some of you know, the mayor said, we'll raise taxes, we're gonna, hundreds of millions of dollars. And the Chicago City Council, what did they say?
No.
They totally unanimously turned down the mayor's budget. They totally turned it, and the mayor's he's responding to his last job is working, raising money for the teachers union, for the teachers. You want that? The whole city council said no. So he cut it back, but it's still large. And then they said yes. But so the quick points is the quick point I'm getting to is there's a distinction between being a businessman and saying this is the policy for police spending should be this or this or this or this or this. It's not altogether tight or clear, or just a simpler version. Lake Tahoe, which has this beautiful lake, mountains, etc. All the business leaders in Lake Tahoe support tourism, amenities, beauty, and nobody wants any smoke. Nobody wants anything but the most environmentally, aesthetically attractive policies that everybody wants. And there's no disagreement. Okay, so what I'm summarizing here in 2 or 3 big points that come from 20 years of research and battles over that question is that these are important issues, and we'll try to bring in bits of analysis and findings of the sort that I'm citing throughout the course is what I'm trying to illustrate with that kind of answer. Follow-up questions? Anything else? Yes.
Okay. So I'm sure you've read about this in the news. It's a big, global political controversy. But Trump recently said that he wants to buy Greenland. Can you give me a cost-benefit analysis of Greenland becoming a part of the United States? And can you tell me if you think that the pros would outweigh the cons or vice versa?
Okay. I'm laughing because for sure, I have not done it, and I can't give you any kind of any sort of serious answer. What we could say is, if we were to try to build on the best work which is available, and we were to do a cost-benefit analysis, what might we do something like this? The guy who's closest to try to do this in his classes and his videos that are available is named John Mearsheimer, he's the top so-called IR theorist, international relations theorist, and since the Ukrainian war took off, he is the main that is, he's very famous in Russia because he's showing the good sides of the Russian reasons for having support for them militarily and economically, and why the Ukrainians are wrong. I won't say wrong. I'm simplifying it in one word. That is, he's showing that is, whereas 99% of the media in the West has been the opposite, basically backing Ukraine. So to have him here, clearly, and so he has brought in a number of arguments and rationales, And I would say the simplest way to summarize it is to say, if you're going to giving a history, and Putin himself invokes a lot of history of Ukraine does this, Russia did that, Stalin did this. Stalin and Roosevelt and Churchill agreed on this. Therefore, we're just continuing that policy. And the Ukrainians will cite a different historical example, or moving closer to combine the sort of business or the different institutions in addition to business. Putin, with his background in the KGB, was secular, and the Russian position through Stalin was basically anti-religious, secular, not celebrating, not giving any advantages to being a Catholic or Orthodox Catholics, etc. He's reversed himself in the last 10 years. I mean, he's doing lots of things with the Orthodox Church, and so that is, in part, he's not, he didn't run in terms of the KGB, doesn't have a philosophy of doing good things and moralistically, but the Orthodox Church does. Put the two together. And so the church has they built new churches which are celebrating the military success, and Stalin himself. Well, we'll talk about that. I don't want to go into too much here, but I'm simply giving you the point that trying to articulate where and why the components could feed into a cost-benefit analysis is something that we can and should talk about here. It's hard to get that to be articulated in most of the, I mean, it could be called normative theory. Well, I mean, you can get aspects of that. I mean, that's almost a tricky. I don't want to try to get into too much economic normative theory in detail, but I'll bring in examples now, such as the example I just gave you of bumpy streets, and how much to charge for bumpy streets, and how do you get to those? How do you get those numbers? But so the simple big example, which we will really feature in this course, is how to use amenities and how to be able to feed them into this kind of analysis. And my quick answer is, don't study one at a time, and assume or empirically try to put in, say, 10 variables, and we control 10 variables, and then we put in one more, and that's bumpy streets. If you control 10 variables, that ain't enough. That is, there are lots more things that differentiate between Evanston and Chicago than 10 variables. So what we've done is more like put in 500, hundreds of variables, and they then with with a whole cluster of these, we can see the scene. And so I could give you the example of Lake Tahoe, where the business leadership in Lake Tahoe supports skiing, no smoke, and so forth. All right. Other questions, comments? Anything else I've said that was controversial last time? That is, some of these things, such as I mentioned on putting the amenities together, most of the things I mentioned are not me. I didn't invent most of the things that I talked about last time, such as the Paul Samuelson's fighting with the welfare economists in London. There are other things which feed into this, which are important for the course, and more general themes, which either seemed, or that is, have you either in another course either heard what I said, or you've heard two positions where people are fighting, such as with Samuelson and the English welfare state people. Try to keep this open if we can. If you get too noisy, we'll leave it open a little bit. Okay. Another thing as an option, just thinking of papers, participation, things that are extensions. A couple of years ago, there were three guys who were on the football team together, and they didn't know each other, but in the course, they learned they were interested in trying to analyze sports. So they did a paper. Three of them wrote together. All three signed the paper. They all three worked together, and it was excellent. They made a presentation. So if two or three of you want to work together and do something like football, how do you do a cost benefit analysis? That is, and then they had some general data, some general national analysis on football, but then they went into the leading team at the time, and then some evidence there. Yes.
Can we write memos this quarter or no?
Absolutely. No, I mean the simple normal way to add it, that is the exams are weighted X%, that basically participation is the normal way, is roughly 10% of the grade. The 10% can be any of these things that we're talking about that you can do entirely on your own creatively. And the simplest is to do a paper, which could be part of an MA, part of a BA, part of a putting two course. And if you're another course which you did or you're taking now, and you're hearing some things that'll look as if they might be, you could do a paper for two courses. Do the same paper, and then normally let's say we write about that as say 20 pages. Okay, if you don't want to do that, you could write some one-page memos. And so, yes, those could be based on your reading of the readings for that week, and then comment on your five points, and two of these really seem to be compelling. They fit and they fit together with it. That is, we try to give you readings in each section each week. We try to give you conflicting interpretations. So we try to have one people will say like Mearsheimer versus another. That is, we have serious, thoughtful, analytical perspectives which fight, and so you can try to pursue why and how this could be improved, or why it's going, and then look. Okay, so point one, point two. You can think of an example that you may know personally. That is a good thing for I'd say with all your readings, with each session right here in class, reading each day, each night. When you read something, if it doesn't fit with your intuitive feeling, this doesn't seem right. Try to write that down, and ask yourself in writing, why? What's your intuitive feeling? Why does it seem wrong? I mean, if it seems wrong, that's interesting. For instance, it may be that you grew up in New Orleans. If you grew up in New Orleans, but I gave you the example, how many people, how many of you grew up in a city where people are coming to that city, and they're coming to a big convention, are being welcomed by a jazz band of 50 people playing in the street? It's what they do in New Orleans all the time. When I worked with the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors for a while was named Moon Landrieu. He was mayor of New Orleans. One of his great expressions I loved was, "If you have lemons, make lemonade." If you're at Lake Tahoe, that's great. If you're in Chicago, use the lakefront. If you don't have a lakefront, so we have a whole section here. If you're a gray, ordinary, medium-sized small town in Indiana, what's the mayor say? We don't have Lake Tahoe, we don't have Lake Michigan, but we've got lower taxes, and we've got better service for this. They just talk about good, simple, basic government. And a lot of people go there. But that is, so in that sense, I get a lot of people say, you study all these things, amenity cities, where would you like to live? You know, why would you like to go there? And I always answer, look for what's, I enjoy wherever I go, I look for what's interesting about that city or that small town. Because every town, every city has some things that are very interesting. Even if it's Al Capone, Max Weber and others, from the 1920s at least until maybe today in different ways. Trump would cite regularly the worst, criminal-dominated city in the United States is Chicago, and so the police union in Chicago, literally, as you know, perhaps under COVID, the police union said, "This city is out of control. Mayor doesn't know what's doing here. Please send in the National Guard. Back us up. We need support nationally." And Trump said, "Here we come." Okay, that happened. And so there were different ways that was covered up or interpreted by the mayor and by the police union, but they were fighting, very bitterly. And then, okay, so I won't go too much beyond that, except meant to make the point that we don't want to ignore the ideological arguments, but we don't want to just say do it because it's good. We want to try to say what are the specific, and then try to connect it with your intuitive feeling, and then to help you with yourself or your family or your background or your city to feel and to say, why am I intuitively disagreeing with this or that? Another way we do it, and I do it empirically, is bike around the city, look at different neighborhoods, and stop and talk to people. Because the neighborhoods of Chicago are drastically different, and they fight with each other in the city council. It used to be the machine versus the rest, and the independents versus the machine. The independents were then Hyde Park, a couple of people in Lincoln Park on the near north side, and nobody else. 3 or 4, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 congressmen over the 20th century. Dick Simpson done a book on this history. It's the only serious book on the history of Chicago City Council. Look, based on the contributions and voting. When Harold Washington was elected, and I then started an oral history of Bill Grimshaw, we went around and we started interviewing people and said, are you a reformer or not? Or what do you think about reform? Half the city council members we interviewed, of course I'm a reformer. It wasn't 1 or 2. But then, on the other hand, some of the other students who work with us on the oral history say, of course, I back the machine. The way it was done under Daley 1 is what we really ought to go back to. If we could go back, Daley 2, he listened to Harold Washington too much. The son and the father, the Chicago Magazine, Chicago Daily 2, don't want to tell too many stories, but to make the quick label was, their view was Daley 2 was no good as a mayor because he couldn't speak proper English. He spoke the way his father did, which I've sometimes given you my label, Chicago public school English. And as I don't know if I mentioned, I've lived in Bronzeville basically most of my adult life, the whole time I've been here on the faculty, and it's a great way to bring in some different ways of thinking as I see it and see it with my neighbors. But one of the major quick takeaways is there are lots of different ways of doing it, which you can call black power. But they, 5 different ways of doing black power. Or I'm not in favor of black power. I may be black, and I don't like those people who are doing black power. I want to be more racially integrated. And so Obama got elected not based on running on black power. His wife did. His wife did at Princeton for her BA. And when he was running for president, her BA disappeared from Princeton, and none of the press could find it anywhere. Okay. And the New Yorker magazine had a picture on the cover of New Yorker showing Michelle Obama with machine gun bullets draped over her left and right shoulders. And Barack Obama was wearing a Indian Gandhi white peace-oriented outfit. Okay. And just to add one more name, Tony Preckwinkle, who is now the president of the Cook County Board, was my former alderman, was my former student here at the university with her husband. Tony Preckwinkle was always in favor of racial integration. And so the president of the university, we had a big meeting over at Ida Noyes. It was about Hyde Park. Is Hyde Park racist, or is it for? Yes, it's racist. It's bad. Hyde Parkers are bad. They're fighting. They're doing they had racial covenants. They wouldn't let blacks buy and sell houses in Hyde Park, etc. in the 1940s, and that got abolished. Okay. So I asked the question for anybody, but Tony Preckwinkle answered and said, "What's the position? What is the position of the aldermen out just surrounding Hyde Park, who are all African American?" And she said, "I can't answer for all of the others, but I can simply say, in my 3rd ward." Or 4th ward, the only kind of integration that I talk about is economic. Racial integration is too divisive. So if you look at national surveys among African Americans, it's not a simple normal curve, so-called. It's two beautiful ladies, to those who support black power and those who are racial integrationists, and many fewer in the middle. Okay. So some of the themes. We're doing well. Another question or comment? If we can, I haven't given you enough advance. Well, maybe if how many of you know about Theaster Gates? Probably nobody. He's on our reading list. You're smiling. You want to. If you can reach, just go to Canvas, look at the readings. Look at Gates. You see that easily. He's a.
The gentrification one.
Sorry.
The gentrification one.
They're about. Can you see 3 readings? Gates, Theaster.
Yeah.
Okay. Just read me what's on what the. This is on this. These are things which are on the Canvas readings.
it's a
Yeah,
video.
are you using the syllabus or using the
I'm
campus
using
read?
the syllabus.
Okay, yeah, what we really, well, okay, let's not, let's always do, I'll just tell you a couple of things. He won, he, 25 years ago, he was a potter. He was an unknown guy, and he'd worked for the city of Chicago for a little bit, trying to beautify the L stops, the rail train stops, which were dangerous, ugly, high crime, and what can be done about it? So he worked on that for a little bit, and he was a potter. He did other things sort of on his own, then he gradually put them together. He had a group called the Black Monks of Mississippi. Black Monks of Mississippi, he's from Chicago, why they call Black Monks. So he'd round up 2, 3, 4 people, and they would sing together. And then when he got more famous, he went to the Netherlands, and they had the Black Monks of Mississippi were singing together again, but this time they all had white faces except for him. He had a sense of irony. So he would say, well, you know, I want to get to Lake Michigan because the rain is getting stronger and Noah's Ark is going to take the last of us who are going to be there. But I don't know if I can get there because the streets are too dangerous in Chicago. Okay, so he'll combine irony, teasing, aspects of racial sensitivity in ways that are often considered politically incorrect. Nevertheless, so as he got a little better known, this was, I think it was 2015, it must have been, I'm not sure exactly, I'm terrible on dates, but I think it may have been 2015. At the Venice Biennale, the International Art Show Museum Conference, the artists of the world chose Theaster Gates as the most important influential artist in the world. How did he do it? It wasn't because of his pots. It wasn't because of his black monks performing beat as really good singers. He also put on a presentation he organized in a I think it was at Madison Square Garden, or something. I think it's a great big theater in New York. And so he did it while he was on roller skates. He was roller skating around all these tables at the same time that he was talking about. So that is, he'd combine things with irony that shouldn't be put together. Okay, is there another, so I paid attention because he and some of his staff came around to me initially. The staff came to some more classes, you know. So when he gave the first public presentation when he'd been appointed to the Cultural Policy Center of the university, where it was replaced by him. So he was the head of this in the Harris School of Public Policy. So he had a session with him, the dean of the Harris School, the secretary of culture in the secretary from the city of Chicago, and the Lead Foundation, which was giving him millions of dollars, lots of money. And they all said, you know, you're working on one little neighborhood, one house, 2 houses here. How can we scale this up? What can we do which is more generalizable? And what did he say? He meandered around, but he said, then finally in different ways he'd say, you know, I have no way to do so. I have no idea. So he knocked on my door. Okay. So we started working together, And a year later, well, we then had 4 students who worked on master's theses, 4 master's theses, and one of them was just working on the Theaster Gates program. And a year later, we had an international conference with our scenescape stuff, our scenes people from around the world, and all came to Chicago. And in the middle on Wednesday, we had a public session that Theaster had his presentation. But it was presented by him saying, this is my program? No, he had artists, dancers, singers, poets, presenting in their artistic background and their styles, 0.5 and then 0.6 and then 0.7. And it was quite a show. Okay, so Theaster, I do triathlons. Bike races and travel. If you do triathlons, you're not really the best in the world in terms of biking, or even in Illinois. Although I can't say I was a year or two ago in biking. But when you get to swimming, you're not as good as the really good swimmers. And if you're a runner, you're not as good as the people who just run all the time. So Theaster's like that. He does a lot of different things, but he's not absolutely the best in any one of those. And so, but my point is, take a look at what he's doing. He also does economic development. He invests. He buys property. So he's investing as a developer. He's a businessman in that sense. Think about where and how to put these together, and how you would change his program, which as is featured there. There's one session he's in Aspen, Colorado. They invited him out, and they had the main, that is why are we also, he and me in Bronxville are important, and in the world. Look at Armani. Look at the advertisements of Elle or women's magazines, or who are the models? There are a lot of African Americans. Singers, music, jazz, hip hop, house. This is music that came from Bronxville. Combined with, so the head, and so the 2 leaders, neighborhoods nationally, are Harlem and Bronxville. They're the leaders of African American national. And this is what they listen to in larger numbers in Sweden. Okay, African American and Hollywood, for sure. Okay, so this is played around the world, and Theaster is part of that. And this, we can try to think of cultural policy, what they talk about in China. How do you build cultural policy? Not only how you do culture cost-benefit analysis, how can you analyze and that is, how does it make a difference and why, if you're consulting with the mayor? Okay. We're ending for the day. We're welcome, that is, let me say, I'm happy to talk more or less. I'm happy to listen to you ask questions and discuss, or not. And in different years, based on who's here, we'll change. If you want to sit there and have nothing to say, if you want, but find a way to participate that you enjoy. And we'll look forward to it.